The first time I went through this process after college, everyone thought I was crazy. They're just like, literally, they thought I was crazy. First of all, you're starting a company. You're not taking that, stable, great, like engineering job that pays you a stable salary after we put you through college and like this, whole thing. And then second of all, you're on a visa. Can you even do this? Like, what are you doing? But anyways, they thought I was crazy. And the interesting contrast is that when I was considering what I wanted to do next after my last company, I considered a couple of different paths, like most of them being, working for someone else at a different company. And my family, my parents, they were just like, you should start your own company. They were like, mm-mm, like, do not work for anyone else. Like, do your own thing.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it was like a stark difference.
Hey everyone, welcome to Founders Without Borders Season 3. I'm your host, Harshita Grasse, and I'm so excited to introduce you to our first guest of Season 3, Liesel Vaidya. Liesel is the co-founder of Imera, platform that's helping immigrants navigate life in the US with more ease and confidence. In this episode, Liesel shares her story about building a company on a student visa after almost being deported. Liesel is originally from Nepal. She moved here for college, and since then, she's built award-winning products and has been recognized by Forbes 30 under 30, Crane's 20 in their 20s, and Fortune Changed the World for building impactful, human-centered solutions. Liesel is an expert in the immigration space after having navigated a lot of problems. She has also helped a ton of friends, including me, understand the immigration space a lot better. I'm so excited for you to listen to her share her story. Welcome to Founders Without Borders, Liesel. It's amazing to have you on the show, and I'm so excited that you're kicking off season 3 for us.
Yes, it's been a long time coming, and I'm so excited to do this with someone I've known for a while.
Obviously, I've known you as a friend and I've known your story,
Hmm.
but I think there's so much about your story and your journey that people outside of like your
Hmm.
friend circle or like the close
Yeah.
mentors don't know. So I'm very excited for you to share your story and your life journey in your own words. I would love to get started with who is Liesel and what is Imera? What are you building and why are you building it?
Hi, I'm Liesel, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Imera. And essentially, I started this company after actually almost getting deported about 2 years ago, which is a crazy story. But again, like it all goes back to, if you're on a visa navigating life here, uh, it is very, very difficult. And no matter who you are, what you've done, like it's just as complex. And basically, that incident made me spiral into this space and I learned a whole lot of things and I was helping a ton of people with my learnings, friends of friends. And after I helped like a couple of dozen people, I realized, wait, I can just build something in this space to do this at scale. And yeah, that was kind of how I ended up starting Imera over the last year. Yeah, this is deeply personal to me. I started my first company on a student visa, like right after college, and have been through just the journey in many different shapes and forms.
I think I remember we talked about this before because we've had conversations about visa and immigration kind of loosely here and there, and you've helped me
Hmm.
navigate things in the past. And then when you launched Imera, or at least the idea of Imera, I was like, okay,
Hmm.
this makes a lot of sense. Like you've been on the path, you understand the space inside out, and you've also done the work
Hmm. Yeah.
to learn more and educate yourself. Like it was a no-brainer for you to start Imera, and I'm so glad that you did take the leap. And a year later, and hopefully many, many more years down,
Hmm.
Imera becomes the go-to app for immigrants to sort of get acclimated to a new country in general. With that, can you share a little bit more about what Imera is?
Yeah, so we're essentially a company that helps anyone in the US on a visa navigate life here more easily. And how we do that is by providing personalized guidance, getting you very easy, digitized, streamlined access to all types of essential services. So everything from a legal standpoint to financial services, housing, healthcare, you name it. And then lastly, we also help you build community. I feel like I am still only here because of the people that I had access to and the things that I learned from them. And I want to try to recreate that through a lot of the things that we do at Imera. So we also host a lot of cool events. So if you're listening, please join, our future events as well.
That's
Yes.
awesome. So, Liesel, I think it makes sense for us to kind of go back in the past, time travel a little bit, and
Mhm.
then just kind of understand your immigrant journey as well. Can you share more about where did you grow up and how did you find a way to come to the US?
So I grew up in Kathmandu in Nepal. And I was there for 18, 19 years of my life, essentially, before I moved here for college. My family still lives back home. My parents are still there. I knew very early on that I wanted to pursue higher education outside of the country. And again, a lot of like things went into that decision, but also like I moved here 2014, so it's been 11 years. But right before I left in 2013, maybe, we used to have electricity cutoffs back home, and at
Mm.
peak, we didn't have electricity for 18 hours a day. And we would have candles at home. Like generators weren't like a thing that most people had. And it was just like crazy when I think of it now, having lived here for such a long time. And it was just like basic things were so hard. So it felt like living in a bubble, especially if you're anyone who's ambitious, like it could feel very frustrating. So I definitely knew that I wanted to pursue higher education outside of the country. And US was where my brothers had also studied in the past. They're like older than I am. And I also really romanticized the idea of New York City and like, I don't know, guess living the American dream. And that led me to apply to a bunch of universities like around this region. And eventually I ended up getting a scholarship to go to UB, and that's how I went to Buffalo, which I had no idea Buffalo, New York is not New York City. Like I was so fresh off the, I mean, I knew it was like far, but I didn't like really knew like how far it was. But that's how I initially got here.
That's so funny. I feel like one of the things that I would always tell people is like when people hear that Buffalo is in New York, it's like, oh my gosh, weekend trips to New York City. It's going to be great. And then you realize that, sure, the flight is 45 minutes, but the drive is
Hmm.
actually quite far. Like the
Yeah.
bus, I think Greyhound used to take what, 10 hours or something?
Yeah,
Um,
8 to 10 hours because I primarily took the bus most of the time because that's, easily accessible, affordable as a student because it was like 10, 20, $30 versus flights you're paying like 10x at least more. So I was a Greyhound frequenter or Peter Pan, and oh my gosh, my back hates me. Like I think I have back issues now because of all those trips.
yeah, I remember the good old days of Greyhound. You had your siblings, they
Hmm.
studied in the US before, so that was your guidance to like at least have a
Hmm.
sense of like, okay, this is a
Hmm.
thing that's possible potentially.
Hmm.
Let's try to work towards that. Can you talk about what your college experience was like in general and
Yeah.
how you started to look at entrepreneurship, whether it was in
Hmm.
college, before college? Like how did
Yeah.
the seeds to start your own company get planted?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't plant them. They just like happened and I went for it. And I had like I literally had no plans to be an entrepreneur. Like when I was still in college, it just like right after college, I worked at a startup and then that sort of gave me enough exposure into the industry. And then when the opportunity and the problem presented itself, I was super excited and I was like, let's do this. Not knowing, like, I was just like so naive also. But at the same time, again, like, that's also helpful because you're approaching things as an outsider in many ways and allows you to go faster. But in college, I definitely thought that I was going to take like an engineering job as, a big tech company. And the little I knew about startups was like some of the, you know, um, companies that were like popping up here and there. And I was like, oh, what if I worked for Glossier? I remember like I used to be a fan of like the
Yes.
company back in the days, right?
I
And I was like,
remember. I
oh,
did not. I only knew about Glossier because of you, because
yeah.
you were such a big fan and so dedicated.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I used to love that brand in college. I mean, I still do, but and I learned that through them, I think, and like a couple of other companies that, oh, that's a startup. And I was like, that's so cool. And like, I love their approach to like different things. But anyways, as I was graduating, I was interviewing like at a bunch of banks at like very traditional engineering jobs. And when I went in for my interviews, I remember seeing endless cubicles and it was in locations that were nowhere in close to New York City, basically. And I was like, mm-mm, like this is not happening. Like, I couldn't imagine myself doing that, and, that essentially led me to, work at a startup in New York City after college, and I think it was, like, 4 or 5 months in that, I began working on my first company after.
Wow. I will say this, it does take a lot of guts to say no to something that the whole world is chasing, right? Like you
Mm,
start college, you do these internships, and then the end goal is typically graduate and then get a job.
yeah.
The more prestigious the company, the better, especially in
Mhm,
like Asian countries. I can speak for India. Like
mhm,
if you work at a Google, you're like
mhm.
it's inherently better than like a startup, right? Doesn't matter what you're
Yeah.
working on, doesn't matter how terrible the work environment is, if
Yeah.
you have that brand name. And for you to kind of
Mhm.
basically just say like, hey, actually I don't think this is it for me, and go a completely different path, which was starting a company on a student visa. I feel like it was not that common at the time. At least now people are more
No.
educated, and yeah, you just see more examples now. So I'm curious to hear, how did you navigate starting a company on a student visa, right? Like there's one is the logistics around what to even work on, but the other
Mhm.
thing is your immigration part of things. Can you share more about what that was like at the time?
Yeah, so back in those days, at that time, this is 2018, 2019. There were basically no startups or like companies that exist today that helped those on student visas get startup visas or like basically create those pathways. So a lot of the advice that I sought came from very traditional law firms that are kind of like trying to put like a square peg in a round hole all the time. And most of them told me that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And I basically listened to the select few that told me how I could do what I wanted to do, but obviously with restrictions and limitations. So I ended up starting my first company on a student visa. I went through the entire process of like OPT, STEM OPT, all of it. I used up, I think, almost all of my time in like both OPT and STEM OPT. And during that time, when I was in my STEM OPT, I became aware of something called an O1 visa. And then it took me like almost an entire year to like prepare for it, build my profile, all the things. It was painful actually, just going through that entire process. And then I applied and I think my petition was approved very quickly within a day or two. And then I got on the O1 track. And then, my company was also growing. So we had a couple of like international employees. Then like we looked at like sponsoring their H1Bs and like basically I became aware of like, other like visa types and also like how frustrating it was to like go through a lottery system and not get picked over and over again because we had an employee who didn't get picked like 2 years in a row, but we really really valued her and her work, so we did the capped exempt H1B program for her. Then like even then I was like, okay, you're from India, like we need to find a better pathway for you. So I spent like 30 minutes maybe like every single week for a couple of months with her, helping her build her profile up for no one, and then she applied and she got it. So yeah.
Okay, so you started, did that, got an O1, and then now obviously you've been helping other people navigate this. Based on what you know today and whatever knowledge you've gathered over the last 10, 11 years, would you
Hmm.
still go back and start a company on a student visa?
I would. And actually, shockingly, we do a lot of events, webinars, things like that, including for international students. And one of the questions that we often ask when people join these is, are you interested in starting a company? And with students, 80% in most of our previous like webinars and other things we've done, they said that they're interested in starting a company, which is like shocking. This is
Wow.
not true when, we were students and, when we were going through the entire process. So it's incredible. I don't know how much impact like different things have had. So I don't know if it's how startups have been increasingly popular versus the economy and how hard it is to get a job versus like I don't know what else, but that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know that was a possibility in college, right? Like it was very much
Yeah.
like, okay, you
No.
get
Yeah.
a bunch of years of experience, and then if you feel like you're ambitious or
Mhm.
entrepreneurial and you want to start something, is only when you would do
Mhm.
that. But I agree with you. I'm also seeing a lot of just students, like 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, starting companies. And I think it says a lot about where the world is moving. People just have more resources now to even navigate starting a company from both like an immigration perspective, but also just from resources to build something. So it's really cool to see the increasing number of young founders as well who are trying to build generational business.
Mhm. Yes, for sure.
I would love to understand what it was like or what it is like to raise money as an immigrant and
Hmm.
as a female entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, raising money is, I think, for most people hard. I know some people do it very easily, which, kudos to them, but it is very hard. And I mean, the first time I went through the process, I was like 23, 24 years old out of college. I was so naive in the sense of I had no idea how like things worked or the rules and laws of like the startup inventor world. I just threw myself into it and learned along the way. And also, like my first company, I was raising money for building solutions, healthcare solutions for survivors of sexual assault. So that is a very hard problem to raise capital for, and learned a lot along the way. But I think just going back to the drawing board in terms of statistically, less than 2% of venture capital goes to female founders. And obviously, a very small, small percent of that then goes to like immigrant female founders. So the odds are against us in many different ways. I think the biggest things that I learned in the process is as an immigrant, especially, doesn't matter if you're female or male, you're typically sort of like putting your head down, humble. You let your work speak for you rather than you like, really speaking about your work in many different ways and forms. And as an entrepreneur, as a founder, you have to learn how to talk about your work, about yourself. Even actually, if you apply for like an O1 or EB1 visa, like you have to do so much of that by putting, all of your accomplishments for the government to see. And that was a learning process and it took a long time and I'm still like learning in many ways. You do have to unlearn, relearn different things along the process.
Yeah. Are you able to share a specific challenge that you can think of that might be helpful
Hmm.
for people to like understand like what's like one thing that you
Hmm.
thought was true about raising capital and it was not, or that you are now going to be more careful about the next time around?
Well, I always gravitate towards things with a story, a personal connection, and that's kind of how I also choose what I want to do in life and things I build essentially. So that's always been important to me in fundraising and pitching. And a lot of like fundraising is like, how do you tell that story, especially in these very early stages, right? And I know a lot of founders, they focus very much on the product, the numbers, this, the that. But I think like knowing how to sell your story and tell your story is just like
Mm.
equally important in the early stages because they're not just betting on, and with like technology, for example, it's so much easier to build so many of these things. Why should someone invest in you as a human? Can you even sell the product? Can you sell yourself? Right. So there is, I think like that's been like a big like learning throughout the years for me.
I think storytelling has become more and more important than just like numbers or like building or like, I mean, obviously all those things are still
Yeah.
important, but so much of like the initial phase of like, why invest in you over like 10 other people who are also waiting in line, right? Like, what is
Yeah.
it
And
that,
actually, I was gonna say instead of 10, like now there's probably hundreds. I don't know. It's
yeah,
like so much
exactly.
easier
It's
to
just
build
made it so
things.
much easier. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's just, we're all looking for the same thing. Like, you're all building cool
Hmm.
stuff. And I think like humans still give you money. So I feel so
Yep.
much of it is connection, emotional
Hmm.
connection, trying to get other people to resonate with your pain point or your story in
Hmm.
general. And I think you bring up a really good point about storytelling and just the importance of it in today's day, not just like while pitching, but in every aspect, right? Like
Hmm.
I work in data and storytelling is a big part of what it is to show people data and convey things
Yeah.
or like drive business insights. I'm curious to hear how your cultural identity
Hmm.
has influenced how you run a company. The West and the East are very different from a cultural perspective. You grew up in the eastern side of the world, and then you're here building a company in the western side of the world, two completely different cultures. How did you kind of reconcile the two?
Yeah, I guess growing up, I mean, my parents were like amazing. They always pushed me to like do things that my brothers did, for example. So it helped being the younger sister, and they wanted me to pursue all the things my brothers would do as men, right? And they didn't want me to feel like just because I was a daughter or female, like I shouldn't like do certain things. But at the same time, I lived in this like culture, this society that basically told women, be small, don't take up too much space, keep your head down. A lot of like parts of Nepal, it's like you grow up and women weren't necessarily like seen in the workforce. There, like a lot of them are housewives, for example. Like in my own family, we had a lot of women who were housewives, which is also a very important job. But again, growing up, I didn't have a lot of role models. Like my mom was one of them. She was one of the few people in our like family, for example, as a woman, she was working in an office. She was one of the first people I knew who drove a car, and like it was like a whole
Oh,
thing. So she was awesome. But in the wider world and society, I didn't have other role models who were female who were super, super successful as a female. So that was definitely lacking. But on this side of the world, like I've learned to take up space. I've learned to speak up. I've learned to like do all the things that in growing up I was encouraged probably not to.
that's a very similar observation on my end as well. I think like in my family as well, it's very similar. Like a lot of the women
Mm-hmm.
are, at least my parents' generation, have been
Mm-hmm.
housewives, and obviously like the next generation is like
Yeah.
more work oriented, more career oriented,
Yeah.
or just to have more opportunities to be
Mm-hmm.
career oriented. Makes such a big difference when you see that example in your family.
Mm-hmm.
It's like such a
Yeah.
positive reinforcement that you can do it too.
Exactly. And then I guess the other thing that also comes to mind is the fact that, especially when I was building my first company, obviously I was building in a space that was very much considered taboo in many different ways, like where we're from. And even like now, like here, it's still a very sensitive subject. So a lot of people, who I'd meet professionally who came from similar backgrounds as I did would ask me, "Oh, do your parents know what you're doing?" So it was very interesting for me to like observe that, and that's just like again like how we grew up. We still don't talk about so many different like topics very comfortably, back home. And I think on this side of the world, like I think something the West does very well is they teach children very young and very early how to talk about things in a more positive way, which you can see sort of the differences in how that shapes us as adults.
What do your parents think about this now? How has their reaction been to like you starting a company
Yeah, oh my
and like
gosh.
building?
Yeah, so the first time I went through this process after college, everyone thought I was crazy. They're just like, literally, they thought I was crazy. First of all, you're starting a company, you're not taking that stable, like, great, like, engineering job that pays you a stable salary after we put you through college and like this, whole thing. And then, second of all, you're on a visa. Can you even do this? Like, what are you doing? But, anyways, they thought I was crazy. And the interesting contrast is that when I was considering what I wanted to do next after my last company, I considered a couple of different paths, like most of them being, working for someone else at a different company. And my family, like my parents, they were just like, "You should start your own company." They were like, "Mm-mm, like do not work for anyone else. Like do your own thing."
Whoa.
Yeah, so it was like a stark difference. That was very interesting to see.
That's so heartwarming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's so nice. And I'm sure they saw that
Mhm.
how like capable you are, and I'm sure like they've seen you grow in general as a person as well. Like when
Yeah.
you were in college or like when you just first moved from Nepal
Mhm.
to now like building a second company. You've been on like in the Forbes 30 and the 30 list, which was awesome. I remember seeing
Yes.
that and I was like, finally someone I know. That's amazing. It was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. It definitely was a proud moment, I think, for me, more than like being on the list as a Nepali person. Oh,
I wanna dive sort of deeper into just the pain point that Imera is solving. I know we talked about. I mean, we've talked about your immigrant journey so far. Can you speak to what specific challenges that new immigrants might have as they like first land in the U.S. and how Imera
yeah.
is helping solve that?
Yeah. Well, if you're just arriving in the US, you probably don't know what you don't know, right? And by the time you potentially learn about what you need to do and all of that, it might be a little too late because so much of like the things you need to do while you're on a visa you have to start early. So an action that you take now might determine what options you have a year or 2 years down the line. So you need to really get started early. So a lot of what we provide as a platform is very preventative in nature, so that preventative and proactive, so that again we put you on the path to like get to your goals faster, with hopefully way less stress, efforts, energy, money burned, during that process. Because on average, we looked at the numbers. People who come here on a work visa or a student visa spend an average of around 7 years, essentially. And and for many people, it can be much longer as well. For some, it might be shorter, but typically it's around that time. And that's a very long time, right? And if we can essentially help you make decisions that put you in your path to success and help you unlock opportunities and really help you do what you want to do in life, like quicker and more easily, we want to be that platform.
Yeah, I feel like the first few months of moving to a new country are so important.
Yeah.
And faster you feel comfortable navigating the country, like the easier it
Hmm.
gets. There's social isolation, right? Like you've just completely uprooted your life and moved to a new country.
Hmm.
Probably don't know many people, maybe may not have family, might have family, don't know. But there's just
Yeah.
so many different challenges that come with even the smallest thing like getting a phone number or
Oh
figuring
my
out
gosh. Yes.
what bank to pick or open an account in.
Yeah, and it's also painful, like that entire process, because for a lot of people, when you first arrive, it's everything's so manual. You have to physically go to a bank. You can't do it online. Like most people who've lived here for a long time, or Americans, like you can go online and within seconds you can open a bank account. It's like that simple. Yet for those of us who move from a new country or on visas, everything's super manual. You have to physically make an appointment or physically go in and wait in line for hours, and something that should take hopefully seconds online then is like taking hours, days, weeks. So using our platform, for example, one of the parts that we provide is we have all these partnerships with other services and companies. So if you're a newcomer, we have a newcomer path. So you can open a bank account as soon as you have a valid US visa. You don't even need to be in the US at the time, and allows you to create a digital card. And then as soon as you come in, like you can get the physical card as well. So that from the moment you land, like you can tap and pay your Uber rides, like all of those things essentially. And same with like phone numbers, everything is like super digitized, and we want to create the same ease that other people have, living here essentially.
That's awesome. I really wish I had this when I moved. The funny story that comes to mind, if I have to talk about like my initial days, is
Hmm.
the whole like SSN concept. You
Hmm.
need a job offer to get an SSN,
Yeah.
but then you need an SSN to get a job offer. And it's like, where do I start? I think campus dining was the only place that would
Yes.
give you a job offer so that you could get an
Yes.
SSN.
Yeah, it is so hard to figure out. And yeah, I think I got my SSN through campus dining as well.
I think you've built a really fantastic network around you, right? It's
Hmm.
mentors, it's teammates, it's friends. I know some of your investors are also like good friends and good
Yeah.
peers for you in general.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for immigrants as they're thinking about building or expanding their network, just personally and professionally
Hmm.
as well?
Yeah, I feel like I see this often, but the biggest thing to do is try to think of ways you can give someone something first before taking something from them or like asking something of them. Like think about what value you can provide to them. And again, like I know for a lot of people, when you think about someone else who may be like much further ahead or in a large position, you might be thinking, what can I possibly do for them? But trust me, there's always something you can do, whether it's even like giving a small thing like a shout out. Maybe you go to their event, like posting something about it, like little things make a difference. So like always think about what you could potentially do for the other person before asking or receiving. Or if you receive, like try to give back in different shapes and forms. And I think like that really goes a long way. In the past like few years, I spent a lot of time thinking about community networks, and I've gone through some of the most difficult sort of like moments in my career because of all the people I had around me and all the mentorship, the advice, the friendship that they were able to give me. So that I deeply value, but also like, growing up where we grew up in different parts of the world, like we grew up around such like tight knit communities. And knowing that I intend to be here for a long time, that's something that I want to recreate in this part of the world, right? So when I meet people, I'm always thinking about, do I see myself having like them at like my birthday or like a dinner party or with my friends and family from or
Oh.
not even from like work, right? I think we often forget to like humanize who we are and who the other person is. So just take the time to like know people without an agenda, I guess.
Like, I think we could definitely use more of that.
Yeah.
We're coming almost to the end. What is next for Imera?
Okay, so we just beta launched about 3 months ago. We're on the App Store and the Play Store. So definitely like go download the Imera app and give us feedback, use those features. If you want to see something, let us know. We're highly reachable on most platforms, and we are getting ready for a wider rollout. So we've been rapidly iterating based on a lot of the feedback that we received in our beta, and we're just super excited to dive deeper into providing more value. So a lot of our beta was focused on letting people know like what to do, what they needed to do at any given point in time. So based on their visa type, nationality, their goals, we would tell people, here's all the things you need to know right now and do. But now we're moving towards making it actionable, so helping them do those things actually. So
Nice.
super excited for that. And yeah, if again, like you're on a visa, you need to be on the Imera app.
Woo! Exciting. Speaking of actionable things, if you were speaking to an immigrant
Mhm.
who wants to start their own company or build their own business, what is the one thing that they can do today to move closer towards that goal?
Oh, can I say two things? First is visa related because if you're an immigrant, you're probably on a visa, which means if you want to start a company, then you should be thinking about what visa allows you to do that. And there are different visas that will allow you to do different things with different limitations. But the best visa, if you want to start a company, is something called an O1 visa. If you aren't familiar with it, the extraordinary ability visa, and if you look at the fine print, it can be intimidating because it says something like, if you have a Nobel Peace Prize or an Oscar or Emmy, like, you get a O1 or an EB1, which is the green card version. But if you continue reading, there's like other requirements you can fulfill. And if you take the time and if you put yourself out there, which is something you need to do anyways if you want to excel in your career, then you can qualify for the visa in time once you put in the work and build up your profile. So definitely look into that. So that's the first thing. And second thing is, I think a lot of people have incredible ideas. Like there's an abundance of ideas out there, but they're lacking in action. So be action oriented. Just start taking steps towards, that idea. If you have a good idea, don't let it go to waste. Start doing something about it.
That's awesome. Very, I think it's similar to what we talked about, where it's like one is the visa logistical part of things, and the other is just, hey, how do I even get started? Where do I start? So I think just not letting those ideas sit and brew, but do
Hmm.
something. And I think with AI tools, it's become a lot easier to just even start like creating things, prompt if you have to, and then build on top
Yeah,
of it. At least you'll be able to visualize a lot faster like, what this could look
exactly.
like.
You can, and if you don't have a technical background, there's a lot of tools you can leverage. But you can also do so many other things like market research. Go talk to potential customers, people who would use this potential idea or thing that you have in mind. Like there's so much you can do and it all like counts. They're all valid. So like do something, anything, but just start somewhere.
I do want to start this like tradition called Letter to Day One, where
Hmm.
basically we want to give guests the opportunity share a note of wisdom to the version of themselves that have just landed in the US. So let's say this is day one for you. You've just
Hmm.
landed in the US. If you could write a note or share a note to your younger immigrant self on your first day in the US, what would it say?
I think if I could like go back to my younger self who's just arrived here, I'd probably be like, you have no idea what you're going to achieve, and if you have something in mind, just like like times like whatever that.
I think it's so hard to predict where you're going to be. How much of it has just happened because you didn't plan for it? But I think just going with the flow and just being excited
Oh
for the
my god,
future is.
actually, that is so true. I didn't think of it that way. So much of it happened exactly because I didn't plan for it. Not that I'm encouraging people to not plan for things,
Yeah,
but sometimes it helps to go with the flow. I don't know about the quote, but like someone had told me something about like a wave coming in, but it's like sometimes you can't predict when the wave comes in, but if it comes in, you should like learn to ride it.
write it.
So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Liesel, this has been awesome. Thanks for kicking off a fantastic season 3. I I'm so thankful for your time. I know it's been a crazy week, month, year for you
Yeah,
building. You're crushing it with Imera for sure. Good luck to Imera, to what you're building. I'm very excited to see more immigrants. Download the app, try it out. Thanks for
amazing.
your
Thank
time.
you. Yeah, of course. This has been so wonderful, and to do it with a friend.